But we had no wars. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. You know, I did have a bad experience with Israel, though. When we took out Soleimani, it was us and Israel working as a group. And we knew where he was. We knew how he was coming in. We knew the plane. We knew everything. Israel was going to do this with us, and it was being planned and working on it for months. And now we had everything all set to go. And the night before it happened, I got a call that Israel will not be participating in this attack. And he came onto the plane, and we followed him right from the Situation Room. We followed the whole thing, and about 15 seconds later, it was all over, and we did it. But I'll never forget that Bibi Netanyahu let us down. That was a very terrible thing, I will say that. I was saddened by the fate of the Palestinian people. They deserve a far better life. They deserve the chance to achieve their extraordinary potential. Palestinians have been trapped in a cycle of terrorism, poverty, and violence, exploited by those seeking to use them as pawns to advance terrorism and extremism. I was disappointed in Bibi just on a personal basis. When we have an election that was a rigged election, like a third world country election, I think it's a terrible personal trait. I haven't spoken to him since, right? I didn't talk to him. I thought he wanted to make a deal more than Netanyahu. And I will be honest, I had a great meeting with him, Abbas, right? I had a great meeting with him. And we spent a lot of time together, talked about many things. And it was almost like a father. I mean, you know, he was so nice. Couldn't have been nicer. And after meeting with Bibi for 3 minutes, I looked at him and said, "You don't want to make a deal, do you?" And he said, "Well, and the fact is, I don't think Bibi ever wanted to make a deal.
Why?
I thought the Palestinians were impossible, and the Israelis would do anything to make peace and a deal." I found that not to be true.
A lot to unpack there. Let's talk now to former Israeli ambassador to France, Daniel Sheck. So, a lot going on there. Let's start, first of all, with Trump's relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu. That part of the recording where he says F him, that already came out 2 days ago and caused a lot of shock. But now we're seeing further revelations that show that it wasn't just maybe Netanyahu congratulating Joe Biden, but before that, Trump seemed to be frustrated with Netanyahu for not seeming to want to move forward with his peace plan with the Palestinians, even though it should be mentioned that Netanyahu, at least publicly, did endorse the Trump peace plan that he put forward with Jared Kushner.
How are you?
How are you, Mr. Trump? Hello, Mr. Trump.
Nice to see you. I will say this, I'm not sure that either side is ready. I'm not sure in particular that one side is ready and really wants to make a deal, but both sides to make a deal have to want to make it. I have my own views. I want to keep them quiet for a little while because if I ever end up in the midst, that would be a great achievement to get a real peace. I think one side actually would like a deal, and I think the other one maybe doesn't want a deal, to be honest. I don't want to say it. No. Look, we show our cards too much in negotiation. I wrote The Art of the Deal. We show our cards too much. So if I get into that, I don't want to say this and that, and then they'll come and they'll say, well, Trump is biased one way or the other. I think there's a chance that you could probably make a deal if you had a real deal maker, if you had somebody that knew what he or she was doing. I think that if we get the right leadership, which will be me, that's the way I feel. I think I'll do the best job. But I think if we get the right leadership, I think we have tremendous potential. In my opinion, if Israel wants to make a deal, I think a deal could be made. I think it will be made at some point. I think if I get elected, that would be something I'd really like to do, because so much death, so much turmoil, so much hatred, that would be to me a great achievement. As a single achievement, that would be a really great achievement. I think a lot is going to do with Israel. Look, it's going to have to do with both sides, but a lot will have to do with Israel and whether or not Israel wants to make the deal. whether or not Israel's willing to sacrifice certain things. They may not be, and I understand that, and I'm okay with that. But then you're just not going to have a deal. So we'll see what happens. I'll let you know in about, if I win, I'll let you know 6 months from the time I take office. I will have a very good idea as to whether or not a deal can be made. Would we be better off, as an example, in Iraq? What are we doing? What are we doing? The migration was caused by Iraq, by Libya, by this. We want to give people freedom? We're not going to have our own freedom pretty soon if we keep doing this. We're not going to have our own freedom. They don't want freedom. It's like I saw somebody, I won't even say because it's embarrassing. We want it where the women over there don't have to wear the you-know-what. And then I said, oh, well, that makes sense. That's nice. Then I saw women interviewed. They said, we want to wear them. We've worn them for 1,000 years. Why would anybody tell us not to? They want to. What the hell are we getting involved for? In fact, it's easier. You don't have to put up makeup. Look how beautiful everyone looks. Wouldn't it be easier? Wah. Right? Wouldn't that be easy? I'll tell you, if I was a woman, I don't want to. Wah. I'm ready, darling. Let's go. It's true. He said Muslims are a problem. Okay? That's what he said. Okay. Are they a problem? You tell me. And I say, most Muslims, I know many, are great people, just so you put it on the record.
So let's say, do you think Muslims are a problem?
Well, I think a certain segment are certainly a problem, and unless you want to be so politically correct where you want me to say, oh, absolutely not. I mean, you have ISIS, you have the migration, you have all of this stuff. You have, a lot of people think you're going to end up with World War III over the Middle East. I've heard that for 25 years. Mm-hmm. There's something going on. Yeah. So when he said Muslims are a problem, am I supposed to say, oh, look, again, you probably won't put this part. I have great friendships with many people who are Muslim, living in this building, okay, living here. But I have great friendships. They're phenomenal people. And most of them are like that.
Have they asked you about your comments? What do you say to them?
By the way, they think we have a bigger problem than we do. Okay? They think we have a bigger problem because there's a radical Islamic group of people that is brutal. And unless our country gets tough and smart, and unless we have the right leadership done, we're in big trouble.
You mentioned that the World Trade Center came down during George W. Bush's presidency.
Right.
Are you blaming him for that?
I'm not blaming him, although the CIA and other groups, but the CIA said there was a lot of information that something like that was going to happen. I'm not blaming anybody. It's a tragedy, a horrible tragedy, worst in our country's history, worse than Pearl Harbor because you're talking about civilians, not the military, right? Thousands of people killed, a horror show. Now, could he have done something about it? His CIA knew about things happening. I mean, you could have said, but when Jeb gets up and says, we were safe under his brother, we weren't safe. First of all, his brother got us into the war in Iraq, which is one of the worst catastrophes ever. There were no weapons of mass destruction. The World Trade Center came down during his reign, so you can't say that we were safe under his reign when the World Trade Center comes down and the CIA said something like that was going to happen.
George W. Bush is a pretty popular guy in South Carolina, and when you say that he lied, as you did, and you said that weapons weren't there, I mean, the intelligence...
There were no weapons of mass destruction.
But this is basically the Democratic Party line.
I don't care. Look. I'm a businessman. I built a great company. I'm self-funding my campaign. All of the people in the audience, most of them were special interests. It was all stacked for these people, which is fine. I mean, it's fine, but it's really not appropriate. But the people in the audience were lobbyists and special interest people. I don't have any of those people because I'm putting up my own money. I tell the truth, okay? There were no weapons of mass destruction. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying he went in there, he thought there were weapons of mass destruction, maybe, or maybe he didn't, okay? But he thought there were weapons, and there weren't. So, I'm telling the truth.
But you said he lied. That's a little more than just he thought, but
if he knew that there weren't weapons of mass destruction, and if he used that as an excuse to go in and try and make up for some sins for previous years, then it would be a lie. But I don't think, maybe that's true, and maybe it isn't true.
Impeached. You wouldn't own that anymore. You had once said in 2008 you thought he should be impeached.
Let me tell you something. The war in Iraq has been a disaster. It started the chain of events that leads now to the migration, maybe the destruction of Europe. He started the war in Iraq. Am I supposed to be a big fan? Now, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, so many lies are made. But the truth is that we started the war in Iraq. We spent $2 trillion on that war. We lost thousands of lives. We have wounded warriors who I love all over the place. It shouldn't have started. We would have been so much better off if Bush and the rest of them went to the beach and didn't do anything. If you had Saddam Hussein, who's a bad guy and all of that, but he made a living off killing terrorists. Now, if you want to become a terrorist, you go to Iraq. That's like the Harvard of terrorism, okay? So, look, it was not a great job. Now, people can say he's popular. I don't know why he's popular. But we also had an economic collapse at the end of his term. That economic collapse gave us Barack Obama. Without that collapse, we wouldn't have had Barack Obama.
They have a bunch of dishonest people. They've created ISIS. Hillary Clinton created ISIS with Obama. Created with Obama.
But you also recently said that the Middle East would be better off with Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, and Assad in power. How does...
I didn't say Assad, but we certainly have not gained anything with Gaddafi. And you look at what happened. I mean, look at Libya. Look at Iraq. Iraq used to be no terrorists. He would kill the terrorists immediately. It was like, now it's the Harvard of terrorism. Iraq. If you look at Iraq from years ago, I'm not saying he was a nice guy. He was a horrible guy. But it was a lot better than it is right now. Right now, Iraq is a training ground for terrorists. Right now, Libya, nobody even knows Libya. Frankly, there is no Iraq and there is no Libya. It's all broken up. They have no control. Nobody knows what's going on.
So the world would be better off with Saddam Hussein
100%.
And Gaddafi in power?
100%. Now, as far as Assad is concerned.
What about the human rights abuses?
Let's talk about, well, you don't think they're happening now? They're worse now than they ever were. People are getting their heads chopped off. They're being drowned. Right now, they're far worse than they were ever under Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi. I mean, look what happened. Libya is a catastrophe. You look at our ambassador as an example, okay? Libya is a disaster. Iraq is a disaster. Syria is a disaster. The whole Middle East. And it all blew up around Hillary Clinton and around Barack Obama. It all blew up. Now, one thing about Assad, not a good guy. I understand that. But we're backing and spending billions and billions of dollars on backing rebels that we have no idea who they are. And a lot of people think they're ISIS. I happen to think they're ISIS, but who knows? But we're spending billions of dollars to get Assad out with people that we have no idea who they are. I don't think that's smart. We have to rebuild our country. Our country's falling to pieces. We have $19 trillion in debt. We have infrastructure that's a disaster. Our roadways, our airports, our schools, everything. We have to start thinking about ourselves. We're pouring trillions of dollars into the Middle East, and we have nothing for it. We have nothing.
When you said that George W. Bush, which was our last Republican president, a man I respect greatly, a person that we really fought for when he was up against a lot of pressure, that he lied to get us in the war in Iraq. That stung me very deeply. Okay. I don't believe that. I'm just wondering, given some time passing, perhaps you've rethought that. Would you be willing to rethink that?
Well, a lot of people agree with what I said, and I'm not talking about lying. I'm not talking about not lying. Nobody really knows why we went into Iraq. The Iraqis did not knock down. It was not Saddam Hussein that knocked down the World Trade Center. Okay,
that's just what you said was they lied. They said there were weapons of mass destruction, and there were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass.
Well, there are a lot of people that think that. There were a lot of people that think, look, bottom line, there were no weapons of mass destruction. They said there are weapons of mass destruction. I was against the war when it started.
Do you think the president of the United States, George W. Bush, lied?
Well, look, I'm not going to get you a vote, but that's okay.
I'm just giving you another shot.
Let me tell you something. I'll tell you very simply. It may have been the worst decision going into Iraq, may have been the worst decision anybody has made, any president has made in the history of this country. That's how bad it is, okay? Here's what happens. We have spent $2 trillion in Iraq and fighting Iraq. $2 trillion. $2 trillion. Thousands of lives, right? We have wounded warriors who I love all over the place. These are the most incredible. These are braver than all of us in this room put together. I look at the attitude and I work with them, and these are great people. We got nothing. We have nothing. We're not even there. We can't even make a phone call right now.
But to his question,
I'm trying to separate.
Let me tell you. Do I know?
Do you believe he lied, or do you think?
I can tell you this. I don't whether he lied or not. He went into Iraq. It was a horrible decision.